this vote, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 49. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, as amended, is passed.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. There's a reason why Republicans, many of whom did not want Donald Trump to be their presidential nominee, dutifully, even enthusiastically lined up behind him anyway. There's a reason why they've been perfectly calm, even zen, about Trump ever since, even in the face of questions about his grip on reality, concerns summarized this week by Art of the Deal ghostwriter Tony Schwartz.
I know that two different people from the White House, or at least saying they were from the White House and that turned out to be a White House number, have called somebody I know in the last several weeks to say, we are deeply concerned about his mental health. Listen, what happens to a person who's under the kind of pressure and threat he is, and I believe that what accounts for that is Flynn's imminent flip or apparent flip, willingness to tell the story.
None of that matters to Republicans on Capitol Hill. Not Trump's insults against them, not his racist retweets, not his overall erratic behavior, which outgoing Senator Bob Corker, the only Republican to vote against the tax bill overnight, has described as turning the White House into an adult daycare center. There's a reason that Republicans don't seem to care whether Trump got into office with the help of a foreign power, and why they support him no matter how much he degrades the office of the presidency. Last night, we saw the reason. When the Senate passed a bill raising taxes on working Americans in order to cut taxes for the rich and corporations. Last night, the American people saw for themselves that there's only one thing Republicans actually care about. The holy grail of Republicans like House Speaker Paul Ryan ever since they cracked open their first copy of Atlas Shrugged.
To get going to yoga, and that really helps me get through the day. I don't want you to steal my mantra, but my mantra in yoga is tax reform, tax reform, tax reform.
Joining me now, special correspondent at Vanity Fair, Gabriel Sherman, senior advisor at MoveOn.org, Karine Jean-Pierre, and MSNBC contributor Charlie Sykes. And Gabe, you know, Paul Ryan meant that to be funny.
Yeah.
But what we saw overnight, a lot of Americans don't find funny at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a tax bill that is blatantly tilted toward the super rich, not just the rich,
yeah.
The top 0.1%. You know, it would cut taxes immediately on corporations.
Yeah.
To the 20%, and that's permanent,
yeah.
While giving some temporary tax cuts to people in the middle, but raising taxes on the poor.
Yeah, and you know, this is classic Donald Trump, where he was out there in recent days saying he was going to get killed by this bill, and every empirical analysis shows that this is going to be a windfall for him and his family and Republican donors. I think there's going to be second-order consequences, though, to this tax bill, because now that they have gotten this through, and it's going to make it, hopefully they'll get it through as they hope through the conference committee, then they don't really need Donald Trump for anything else. Right. This was the holy grail that Republicans sort of wanted. And I will want to see in the weeks and months ahead, as the Mueller investigation snowballs, we'll start to see them breaking from Trump, because they got what they wanted, which was the tax cut.
Yeah. You know, and there's been, Charlie, you know, this sort of duality between Republicans, other than Bob Corker, who's been pretty consistent. I mean, he said some pretty terrible things about Donald Trump, and he didn't vote for his bill. But you have people like Lindsey Graham, who've been on both sides of the Donald Trump issue. This is Lindsey Graham, Jake Tapper sort of calling out Lindsey Graham this Wednesday on his hypocrisy about Donald Trump.
You know, what concerns me about the American press is this endless attempt to label the guy as some kind of kook, not fit to be president.
Now, I have never said, and I don't think anybody here has ever said, that the president is a kook or that he's unfit to be president. But you know who has? Take a look.
I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office.
What a
Projection is a real thing.
What a difference a year makes.
And it's not just him, Charlie. You've got Jeff Flake of Arizona, from Arizona, from the Hill yesterday. Flake is going to back the tax bill, but Jeff Flake gave that epic speech on the floor in which he talked about Donald Trump debasing the office of the presidency. You've got John McCain. John McCain, there's a piece in the Huffington Post that talks about the statements that he's made at the Naval Academy in October, in which he attacked nearly everything Donald Trump represents. But isn't it clear now that none of that really matters to these Republicans? They don't really care about that. They just care about what they did last night.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with all of that. I mean, the whole process was so incredibly shambolic, loading it up with all those K Street goodies, releasing a 400-page tax bill, minutes before they actually take a vote, adding more than $1 trillion to the national debt. It really came down to two things. Number one, they desperately needed to get a win. And as you pointed out, this is kind of the holy grail. And I've said before, there's kind of a Faustian bargain here. And the Faustian bargain was always, we're going to look the other way. We're going to rationalize. We're going to enable. We're going to defend as long as we get tax cuts. And you saw that. But also, this week really was kind of a microcosm of this whole process because, as you pointed out, you had the president, tweeting out those, racist, anti-Muslim videos. You had him, suggesting that a media critic might have been involved in a murder, bizarre behavior. And yet this is the new normal where elected Republicans basically said nothing. There was no pushback. So what a surprise that the president is feeling empowered to, get in touch with his, inner fever swamp.
Yeah, and I mean, Karine, Nancy Pelosi tweeted out yesterday as this process was unfolding on the other side of Capitol Hill, quotes from Republicans. Congressman Chris Collins saying, my donors are basically saying, get it done or don't ever call me again. Mm-hmm. Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado saying donors are furious, who the Denver Post tried to represent as sort of a moderate when he ran. Lindsey Graham, the financial contributions will stop if we don't do this. So essentially, Donald Trump claimed he came in to drain the swamp. He actually said he would raise taxes on the rich. So all of that isn't true. But isn't it true that Republicans are really exposed here on not really caring about anything other than what they did last night?
Yeah, Joe, you know what? It's exhausting having to come on all the time to tell you and everybody else and lay out how terrible the Republicans are on the Hill. And unfortunately, they make it easy. Look, in the dead of night, they decided to horse trade on the backs of the middle class and poor people for what? To give a pay cut, a tax cut to their donors and big corporations. That's what we're talking about here. This is what Republicans have done. Like you said, it's the holy grail. But there are a couple of other reasons as to why they did this. They were worried. About 2018. They're going into 2018. They have nothing to show for it. There are majorities in the House and the Senate. They have the White House, and they can't seem to govern. They've been completely ineffective. And so this is one thing that they felt that they needed to do. Another reason is, hey, they wanted to get this done before another person got indicted from the Donald Trump circle. So there are all those reasons as well. But they did this under the cover of darkness when Americans were sleeping, essentially, and did this because if they did this in the day of light, people would have rejected this process. A bill that is horrific, that is terrible, that at its best got maybe 28% of support from the public.
Yeah. If that, and Gabe, Charlie talked about this sort of Faustian bargain that Republicans have made. And Republicans, I've talked to Republicans off the record, strategists who said the exact same thing. That, it's not as if deep down they don't know that there's something deeply wrong going on in Donald Trump's mind. Right. I mean, we're going to talk later about the fact that he's now saying it's not him on the Access Hollywood tape. His sort of connection to reality sometimes seems to be less than solid. Mm-hmm. But they do need him for one thing. Mm-hmm. And that is because they aren't popular with base Republicans, but he is. This is Donald Trump tweeting again something that's just demonstrably not true, but that his base is going to believe, right? This is Donald Trump this morning. We are one step closer to delivering massive tax cuts for working families across America. Special thanks to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who he's been hateful toward, and Chairman Senator Orrin Hatch for shepherding this bill through the Congress. Looking forward to signing the final bill before Christmas. And this was Donald Trump on the South Lawn of the White House. Speaking on the South Lawn, I think this is about the passage of the bill. Yeah.
It was a fantastic evening last night. We passed the largest tax cuts in the history of our country and many other things along with it. Tremendous tax reform. But it was the biggest package in terms of tax cuts ever passed in our country. Now we go on to conference and something beautiful is going to come out of that.
the Republicans know that he can sell that to their base, and Paul Ryan can't.
Yeah. But, what I think is going to be fascinating is in the months ahead, we're going to see the results of this bill and what Trump voters think when they see, corporate dividends going up, and if they pay attention to that. I mean, that's also another question in itself. Yeah. But, the actual base, the platform that Donald Trump ran on was not this bill. I mean, my reporting and other people have reported how Steve Bannon wanted a top marginal tax rate increase. Yeah. Actually, there was a very populist element to some of the Trump tax plans, and that's not this bill. So to what degree can he sell this bill of phony goods to his base? I mean, maybe they'll buy it. They tend to buy everything Donald Trump says, but clearly the tax bill that Mitch McConnell rammed through the Senate is not in the interest of the 30% of populist, working class, and Republican white voters that form the base of Donald Trump's support.
Really quickly, Charlie Sykes, you worked in conservative talk radio. Will conservative talkers pretend that this is good for their listeners, or will they sing the Donald Trump line and convince people that they do like having their taxes increased?
No, they will support this. And I have to say, on a personal note, I probably interviewed, Paul Ryan and Ron Johnson dozens, if not hundreds of times on the issue of the national debt, how terrible the national debt was. So I got to say, it's very disconcerting to me to watch them flip around and support a bill that's going to add so much to the national debt. One other point, by the way, for the deadline here, they wanted to get this thing passed before the Roy Moore election in Alabama, because I don't think that they wanted to necessarily have Roy Moore be the decisive vote on this tax package. But Gabriel's absolutely right. This will not get better with time. This will not age well. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in 2018. Yeah.